Athens, the birthplace of democracy. Hero and Dion were on their way to Dion's home, passing through the central marketplace of Athens, where people spent as much time talking as they did shopping. The two young men stopped to buy some olives at a farmer's booth that stood beneath the branches of two old olive trees. As they stepped out into the sunlight again, Dion turned to look up at the top of the hill. "Really, Hero," Dion asked, "is there a more beautiful view anywhere than the Parthenon?" The Parthenon is a temple that's in Athens. "My father and I traveled to many wonderful places on our trading voyage around the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is an ocean. But I never saw anything equal to it." Hero agreed as he looked up at the magnificent temple. Just as the city-state of Sparta focused on self-discipline and training for battle, the Athenians focused on their love of art, beautiful buildings, and sculpture. The Athenians filled their remarkable city-state with graceful buildings that were pleasing to the eye. Inside these buildings and in the public spaces around them, famous artists created statues for all to enjoy. Statues that even today are considered some of the best ever made. The Athenians were wealthy enough. Wealthy means they had a lot of money. They were wealthy enough to cover a huge 40-foot high statue of Athena in gold. Can you imagine how much money that takes? The ancient Greeks showed their devotion to Athena by visiting her statue and offering her prayers and gifts. At the same time that the arts were the glory of Athens, Athenian scientists were making discoveries that would become the basis for modern science. Athenian merchants such as Dion and his father were trading as far west as Britain and as far east as India. These merchants brought back goods and even more knowledge from distant lands. This is another way that the Athenians were different from Sparta. As you heard earlier, Sparta was a closed society. That means that most of their people were not allowed to travel outside of the city for trade or for exploration. At the heart of all these remarkable achievements was the Athenian belief that human beings could achieve almost anything. Achieve means to do something successfully. So they believed that humans could achieve almost anything they set their minds to, and in whatever they could not achieve, they could at least fail with grand grace. Friends, that reminds me of what we call our growth mindset at Brightwood. We always say that even if you fail or you make a mistake, it's okay, you can learn from it, but we believe you can achieve anything. It was this belief in the good of independent thinking, or thinking for oneself, that led to the greatest of all the Athenian gifts to the world, greater than the art or the architecture or the Olympic Games, was the gift of democracy. A democracy is a government that lets people choose laws and to vote who leads them. As Hero and Dion continued walking on that sunny afternoon so long ago, they glanced ahead and saw a face that they knew well. "It's Pericles!" Hero exclaimed. All Athenians knew Pericles, he was the man they elected to run their government year after year. Pericles had great power both as an army general and as the leader of their government. However, like all Athenian leaders, he had to be re-elected to his office every year. And if Athenians did not like the job he was doing, they could vote him out of office or right out of Athens for up to 10 years. Friends, this is similar to how in November our election is coming up. Everyone gets to vote to see if Donald Trump will stay the president or if Joe Biden will become our next president. It had not always been this way. In the past, Athens had been ruled by a king. Then several nobles started to rule in place of the king. Finally, a new leader came along who thought every citizen should be able to take part in his government. Originally, only 2 men were born in Athens and who were considered wealthy enough. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say that again. Originally, only men who were born in Athens and who were wealthy enough, remember that means to have a lot of money, were allowed to be citizens. So, friends, you would have to be born in the same city, Athens, and have a lot of money if you wanted to be the leader of Athens. These citizens had the right to vote, to be a part of a jury that made decisions in a court of law, and to serve in the assembly. An assembly is a large group of men who debated. Now, a debate is when you argue different points to come to a solution. So they debated and created the laws. Over time, even poor men and some merchants who were not born in Athens, but who lived and traded there, were allowed to take part in the assembly. Remember, earlier, only men that were born there were allowed to be citizens, and they had to be born there and have a lot of money in order to be a citizen. And you had to be a citizen to vote. Women, however, did not have the right to do any of these things. Although they could own land and have money, they were still not allowed to vote. Athenian girls did not even have the right to go to school as the boys did. Can you imagine? In your family, if you have a brother and a sister, the brother can go to school, but the sister cannot. You are not allowed to learn new things. For Athenian women, it was more important that they cook, sew, and clean the house. However, all well-educated young ladies learned at least enough math at home to be in charge of the money of the house. And some who had learned reading and writing at home were widely admired. They were looked up to by other people for their intelligence and ability to learn. Most Athenians knew that the best woman friend of Pericles, remember Pericles was the leader of Athens, and he had a best friend who was a woman. She wrote many of his famous speeches for him, but she was not allowed to listen to him make his speech in public. She was also not allowed to vote on the laws he suggested, even though she was the one that helped him make those speeches. Seeing Pericles up ahead now, Dion asked Hero, "Who are those 2 men with him?" Hero looked above the heads of the others in the crowd. Oh, one of the greatest writers in the world, and the artist who designed the statue of Athena are with him. He smiled. Ha ha! Only in Athens could you witness a conversation among the greatest living the greatest living political leader, a world famous writer, and a celebrated artist. Don't you wonder what those great men are talking about? Whatever it is, I'm sure it is a very fascinating conversation.